The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Susan Coffin here today for Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts broadcast. There isn't a parent among us who hasn't wondered how to best manage the incredibly intrusive digital landscape that our families live in. At Attitude, we've talked previously about managing video games. These have always been extremely popular webinars and podcasts. And today we're going to go even farther. Our speaker, Dr. Jodi Gold, who's a nationally recognized expert on technology and parenting, will address the full array of technology aimed at our children, or try to, from texting to cell phones and social media. Her topic is Screen Smart Parenting, how to reap the benefits of technology while avoiding the pitfalls. She'll talk about such items as how to understand the digital landscape and what the research tells us about the realities of raising kids in the digital age, how to create realistic digital rules and a family plan for how technology is going to work in your family, and then how to help your child, especially with ADHD, use technology to benefit them. Dr. Gold, thank you so much for joining us today. We are grateful.
Thank you for having me.
Before I tell you a little bit more about Dr. Gold, who's written a really wonderful book, let me stop to thank Play Attention, our sponsor today. Play Attention is the only brain training system that combines both advanced neurofeedback and cognitive training to effectively improve attention, behavior, and learning skills in children and adults with ADHD. So please log on to playattention.com for more information. We are grateful to our sponsors. They help us make all our webinars and our podcasts free to our Attitude users, so thanks, Play Attention. Dr. Gold is a board-certified adolescent and child psychiatrist. She's in private practice here in New York City, where she's a clinical assistant professor at Weill Cornell Medical College. She's a nationally recognized expert and speaks and makes lots of media appearances around a developmental approach to parenting in a digital age. She's the author of a book that I can't recommend to you highly enough. It's called Screen Smart Parenting, How to Find Balance and Benefit in Your Child's Use of Social Media, Apps, and Digital Devices. Before she talks, let me first outline, for those of you who might be new, how the Attitude webinars work. You have a screen on your right, and you're invited to post your questions in the box. You can do it now, or you can post them at any time. After Dr. Gold has finished her slide presentation, she will answer as many questions as we have time for. If you have problems hearing us, or you're having problems hearing us, please dial in via your phone line, because most likely the cause is your internet connection. If you'd like to take notes while Dr. Gold is speaking, you may download the slides right now from the control panel on your right. It's in the download section. Or after the session ends, you'll find a replay of this webinar. You can listen to it again, including the slides, all on the Attitude website at attitudemag.com/webinars. So with that, let me turn it over to Dr. Gold, and we look forward to her presentation.
Thank you so much. So I'm Dr. Gold. Thank you for joining. So today we're going to talk about Screen Smart Parenting. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got involved with this field. So I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I have 3 kids who are now 7, 9, and 11, but they were more like 4, 6, and 8 when I started this. And what I found was that I would go to work every day, and every single session, technology would come up. It might come up with the teenage girl whose boyfriend broke up with her over text, or it might come off with the 7-year-old boy who couldn't get off of Minecraft. But every single session, it came up. And then I would go and pick up my kids from school, or go to their events, and it would come up in a different way. Should my child learn to read on a screen? When should I give my child a phone? You know, should I hand the phone to them at dinner? And I was really amazed. So as a good doctor, I thought, oh, okay, let me just go to the research and let me find out how to raise kids in the digital age. So I went online, and I actually went to the library, and I was really surprised to find how little there is out there that's evidence-based, that's written by physicians, talking about how to raise kids in the digital era. So that is what I'm going to attempt to try to discuss with you today, is kind of give you some background on the research and some of my clinical experience, and try to be as practical as possible. So I need to move my slides. Hold on. I'm having trouble with the slides. Okay. So I wanted to give you, this is a picture of my kids on devices. So I wanted to give you an overview, not to scare you, but to talk to you about how pervasive technology is. So today, teenagers spend 8 hours and 40 minutes on technology per day, and that really doesn't include homework. Tweens can spend up to an hour a day texting. The average amount for a real texter are 3,339 texts per month. And if you have a middle-aged or high school daughter, you will know that that is not even really hypertexting. 1/3 of third graders own a phone. And to be clear, this stat, I believe, is probably a little bit dated. I would put that number at much higher in 2000 right now. Facebook exceeded 1.1 billion users in 2013, and that I really include this to let you know that this is everywhere on the planet. 15 to 18-year-olds spend 11.5 hours with digital technology if you include multitasking. Multitasking, which we'll talk more about later, but is defined as like being on your phone while watching television. 20% of teenagers have sent a sext. And boys actually spend an hour more than girls on technology, especially in middle school, and that's mostly related to video games. So now that I have hopefully not scared you too much with the statistics, I want to try today to carve out at least a thoughtful plan as to what you can do to become screen smart. So there's three. I'm going to try to divide this talk up into 3 parts. The first part, we're going to talk about how to hone in on your parenting style and family culture. Second part, we're going to talk about understanding the digital landscape. And the third part, the goal is to develop a plan. So talking about your parenting style, that's the first thing that we need to do. So the first thing I'd like to suggest is I'd like to present to you sort of the way I look at parents today raising kids. I really like to take an immigration model. So parents today are the last generation of parents to grow up without having actually been raised in the digital era. We're really digital immigrants. Even the youngest of the parents listening, for the most part. Our children are truly digital natives. They were born into this. Many of them were born after the iPhone was invented. And they sort of speak digital without any accent. While we often look at technology as immigrants do. We're fearful. We want to hold on to the old country. We're fearful of this brave new world. I think this is a helpful way of looking at it, because it helps to understand sort of the disconnect that sometimes occurs between kids and parents. It also helps us to understand where our fears and our anxieties come in, and helps us to examine whether they're realistic fears or not. So I want you to kind of think about yourself as a digital immigrant as we go through this. The next thing I'd like you to do is to think about what your parenting style is. Psychologists divide up parenting styles into 4 sections. You can see it on the slide: authoritarian, permissive, laissez-faire, authoritative. So to start with laissez-faire, nobody who's listening to this is laissez-faire, because by definition they're not involved. The real extremes are the permissive and the authoritarian. So permissive people are very caring and nurturing to their kids, but often do not set as consistent limits around the behavior. Authoritarian parents have a strong set of values that they're trying to instill in their kids, and it's sort of a top-down approach, but there's not always a lot of look at the needs of the individual child. And then authoritative, where you can see my arrow, is sort of striking a balance. This is true for all parenting styles, and this slide I've tried to juxtapose sort of the idea of putting technology here. So an authoritative parent would have technology rules, and they'd be consistent, but they would also be flexible and individualized to the needs of the child. So what I can tell you about our goal here as parents is to aspire to be authoritative. I can't personally say that I achieve that all the time, but that is the goal. The research is really fascinating. The research on authoritative parenting in general is kids who grow up with authoritative parents are more likely to have high self-esteem, they're more likely to not be obese, they're more likely to make better grades, and to be healthier. So if we can kind of make a leap here, I think we can put this into the technology world, that our goal is to aspire to be authoritative. So to have a balance between flexibility in the needs of our kids and the need for rules. So after you've established where you fall here and where our goal is, the next thing I want you to do is to think about your own relationship, your own diet around technology. Are you afraid of technology? Do you embrace it? Northwestern University did a great study, and they divided up families into 3 groups: media moderate, media centric, and media light. And it turns out that about half the families are media moderate, and then a quarter are media centric and media light. What this does is that not all families are created equal. There's no right way to approach technology, but you need to spend a few minutes trying to figure out with you and your significant other what your approach is and how much technology you consume. So throughout this study, throughout this talk, you're going to see that I talk a lot about development and what the age of your child is. So in terms of thinking about your own addictions and issues with technology, it's really critical for those of you out there that have kids 8 and under to be mindful of your use of technology. So the research is really good here. The more parents are on their devices, it's directly relational to kids being on their devices. So the more mom and dad are on their phones and their computers, the more hours the children will log in. This is only true for kids 8 and under. So there's nothing wrong with being on the devices. I just need for families to recognize that your technology use will directly affect your children's technology use up to about the age of 8 or 9. And then after the ages of 8 or 9, children begin to have their own relationship with technology, and that connection becomes unhinged. So now you have figured out your parenting style, you've figured out how you use technology, and you are ready to start thinking about the digital landscape. So this is the part where everybody panics. This is the section where they're like, well, I can't keep up with my 7-year-old, I can't keep up with my 12-year-olds, I need to panic here. So let me be clear here. Even the PhDs in computer science, I don't think, can necessarily keep up with the social media tastes of a 15-year-old girl today. So your goal is not to get ahead of your children. I know you're listening to this webinar partly because you want to have information, and that's important, but the goal is not to get ahead of your kids. You're going to fail there. The goal is to have a general understanding of the platforms that your kids are living in, to have a general understanding of the research that's out there, which is rather limited, and to have a sense of the trends and the debates. You don't have to be ahead of them. If you kind of can speak the language, again, we're going back to the immigrant native thing, if you can speak the language a little bit, you'll be able to figure out and follow how they're living in their digital world. So, behold, the digital landscape. I've only included one slide here, but I have like 15 of all of the different platforms. So the term people use when they talk about technology now is platforms. So I'm giving you an example of what the mobile platform looks like. And essentially everything is mobile now. You can do your homework in a mobile way. You can watch TV in a mobile way. I have to tell you, in my practice, it's been probably a year since I've had any 15 or 16-year-old walk into my office and talk about watching TV on a television. Increasingly, teenagers and young adults and even tweens watch television through Netflix, and they watch it on their computer and on their phone. So even the way we watch TV has completely shifted. So that's an example of the shifting platforms. So all of this is mobile. So we look at things in terms of platforms. There's a television platform that can be watched on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, or on an old school television. So now I'm going to try to quickly kind of review the research that I have found that actually is good. There's a lot of stuff out there, to be honest, as a doctor. There's not a lot of good research that you can say is really peer-reviewed and evidence-based, but I have been able to make a few general assumptions that are based on the research, and I want you to know them because I think they're helpful as you try to carve out your plan for your family. So first of all, this is the big take-home point. A TV in a child's bedroom is bad. Simply, if you take nothing else home from today, you need to get the TV out of your child's bedroom, regardless of the makeup of your apartment or your house. So a TV in a child's bedroom is positively correlated to obesity, to being overweight, to metabolic abnormalities. That means things like diabetes. And to poor academic performance. Truly, these are not new studies. These are old studies that show you make better grades, you weigh less, and you're healthier if you don't, and you certainly are on your devices less if you don't have a TV in a child's bedroom. And to reinforce that, that means that means any platform that your child is watching TV in. So if they have a computer or an iPad, they can play on it in their room or do their homework on it, but you certainly don't want them to sleep with that device where they can watch TV on it all night. Next, background TV interferes with face-to-face interaction. So background TV, which I think many of us grew up with, it's sort of having the TV on, the big normal old school TV on in the background kind of for noise. I think a lot of families do this. That I would highly recommend against. If you're all watching TV, it's fine to have it on, but just to have it on, it distracts from face-to-face interaction. And one of our goals in raising kids today is to encourage face-to-face interaction. Taking that a step farther, I want to make a couple of comments about how TV and technology affects very young children. I can't go as much into detail as I'd like, but I'm happy to answer questions about this later. What we have found is that there is nothing positive about technology for kids 2 to 3 and under. I'm going to talk about all the positive effects of technology for older kids. There is nothing positive about using television and devices for kids under 3, though there may also not be that much that's negative. The only thing I can say that's truly in the literature about excessive TV is that it can be negative when it interferes with language development. So the idea is that if the child is put in front of a device all the time and it actually interferes with the child's ability to have face-to-face interaction, that can cause mild language delay. That does not mean it's not okay to put your child in front of Sesame Street or a device. It just means that after 30 minutes you need to turn it off and you actually have to play with your child. Young children really learn from facial expressions and real-life interaction. Okay, moving on. Digital technology in moderation does improve cognitive abilities in school-age children. And I want to say that again. Digital technology can actually make your kids smarter if it's used wisely and it's used in moderation. And there's lots of good studies to support this. Next, my big hot topic. I can spend the whole hour talking about sleep. But digital technology may interfere or displace sleep, but doesn't directly cause a sleep disturbance. So what I mean by that is certainly if you're up watching or on your devices, then you're not sleeping. Nobody's arguing that. But is there anything inherent about the devices that disrupt sleep? Probably not. There's some discussion about the blue lights and the white lights affecting melatonin, the hormone that helps us to sleep, and I think that's somewhat emerging, but that can be handled by being turned off. So it's not so much the devices as it is the need to be on them where it disrupts or displaces sleep. Okay. Oops. Sorry, I've got my slides. Okay, so that's sort of my research on the physical piece in terms of how technology affects your kids. I want to say a few things that I think are really important and are in the media everywhere about how technology affects your child's social and emotional development. So I love technology in terms of play for middle school kids. I don't love it so much for little kids. I would prefer little kids were actually playing face-to-face and playing house and playing Star Wars. However, for middle schoolers, it's fabulous. So digital technology offers new avenues for imaginative play in older children. What I mean by that, and there's lots of good research to support this, is that at some point in 4th or 5th grade, you're seeing that your daughters and your sons are putting away the dolls and they're putting away the Legos, and imaginative play is sort of disappearing. Now, that's not because your kids don't want to play. You'll see these middle schoolers very ambivalent and wanting and wishing they could kind of dress up, but it's not cool anymore. However, it is cool to do it online. So, for instance, Minecraft is a fantastic place to continue building and continuing being creative once you head into middle school and high school. And even role-playing games where you take on different roles, these very complicated video games, allow kids to basically play war, play house, play life in an imaginative way, which was never allowed when we were growing up. So I want to point that out, that there's a really healthy place for play online. My next topic in terms of the research is what I call the rich get richer in online relationships, and this is very relevant and also very relevant for those of you out there who have kids with special needs or with ADHD. So what the research says consistently in many ways is that kids with good self-esteem and good self-confidence can use technology and social media to make them feel better about themselves, to make them feel more connected, and to make them feel more confident. However, the opposite is also true. Kids that have low self-esteem, who struggle from anxiety, don't feel so good about themselves, may be using technology and social media to make them feel worse about themselves. They're more likely to be vulnerable to cyberbullying or to being humiliated or excluded online. So that's a piece I really want to think about, and that's a lot about knowing your own child. Next, I guess I need to move along here, is selective self-presentation can help you feel good about yourself. Selective self-presentation is a fancy medical psychological term for your Facebook profile. The ability to curate your identity online can actually make you feel really good about yourself. One of the things I really want you to take home today about is that as a parent, your goal is to cultivate a healthy online identity. And we want them to represent their best self online. So helping them to curate themselves online in a way that's authentic, not somebody that's not or somebody that's too sexualized, but who they are, can be really positive. Moving to the end, and the very end, the take home is all the studies are consistent from Sesame Street on to grown-ups, is co-engagement increases the positive effect of technology. What that means is that when you're online with your kids and you're doing something interactive with them, they're more likely to gain the benefits of the digital world. Okay, I'm going to move along with this a little bit faster. These are I want you to be aware of the trends. We can talk more about them in the discussion. I view everything as being developmental. I want you to think about where your kids are developmentally and match their digital needs to their developmental needs. Everything's more mobile. Everything's being marketed towards kids. In terms of social media, Facebook's important, sort of. Everybody's on Facebook, but it's not very important to kids. It's all about Instagram and Snapchat. And hacking and coding are cool, and social media is a great platform for social change. And as you raise your kids online, I want them to be people working for social change, and I want them to use technology as a tool for that. I want to talk a little bit about social media because I know people care very much about this. So first and foremost, social media is also developmental. It doesn't start with Snapchat. And if you don't know what Snapchat is, don't worry. We're going to talk about this. It starts with YouTube. Social media starts really young, and it starts with YouTube. It can move into Minecraft, fantasy football, anything that allows you to interact with strangers online. There are things like Club Penguin, which is Disney's social media site. And from there, at some point in the end of elementary school to middle school, it usually evolves into the picture sites like Instagram and Snapchat. And things like Facebook and Twitter come along later. So please, if you've got young kids out there, don't worry about Twitter at the moment. It's more about YouTube than it really is about Snapchat. So I want to talk about Snapchat for a minute or two because I really think that parents need to, whether your kids are on Snapchat or you even know what I'm talking about, this is one of the best examples of how social media, how us digital immigrants can have difficulty embracing this new world. So Snapchat is an image sharing app where the images disappear after the receiver views it. So you take a picture, you can set it for 1 to 10 seconds, the receiver opens it, and after whatever amount of time you set it for, it quote unquote disappears. Of course, you can screen shoot that picture, which means you take a picture of the image on the screen. And it used to be that the sender would get a notification. Now you can get around that. So as grown-ups, I hate Snapchat because as a grown-up, I'm like, this is where all the sexting, sending sexually inappropriate images is going on, and kids think it disappears when clearly it doesn't. However, that is not the way most middle schoolers use it. Most middle schoolers use it in a way that allows them to communicate via images and pictures instead of words. They don't talk on the phone, they don't write long emails, they send little pictures to each other, and they're not meant to stick around. They're meant to just reflect sort of what they're feeling at the moment. So talk to your kids about Snapchat if they have it. Okay, now we need to think about how we're going to develop this plan. So these are the components of the plan I want you to think about. The plan is not about restricting technology. The goal is not to take away the phone. I know many of us wish it was, but it can't be. The goal has to be to teach them how to use the phone while they're at home and you're parenting them. So our goal is to take a developmental approach to cultivate digital citizenship and resilience, to think about their identity online and off, and to remember that their digital footprint, which is all the stuff that is online about you ever, begins at birth. So what digital citizenship means is I put here, pledge to the power of the internet to help myself and community to follow the digital golden rule. Kids, today technology is just another platform in which kids live. It's not something different. It's just part of their lives. So they have to learn to be ethical and kind and good citizens online and offline. And that is kind of the job of parents. So this is where we as parents have to be involved. Part of that also is we have to teach online resilience. So resilience, we often use the word grit, strength, perseverance. That has to be taught online as well. Kids are going to make mistakes. They're going to have thick skin, and they're going to have to persevere. They need to take care of themselves. And this is stuff as parents that we actually need to be addressing. Okay. These are some examples of how the do's and don'ts of digital citizenship. To give you some examples, I'm just going to go over one or two of them. For instance, an act of digital citizenship would be to delete embarrassing photos, to send kind texts, and to stand up for friends that are being bullied. And things that you wouldn't want to do are to post party pictures of a party you just threw where all of your friends weren't invited, or to forward mean or embarrassing posts. And here, I will let you all look at this a bit more at home, but to talk about how to promote online resilience. And a lot of that is about you talking to your kids about what's good and bad on TV, helping them to understand the difference between fantasy and reality. Understand how powerful Photoshop is and that nobody online really looks like that. You can go to YouTube and Google, or go to YouTube and put in Photoshop and pizza, and you will see how people who know how to use Photoshop can turn a piece of pizza into a woman in a red bikini. So it's worth going online with them, talking to them about what's on there, and helping them to be critical consumers. So growing up digital. So I want to spend just a minute or two specifically talking about some of the risks as you develop your plan for kids that have ADHD. I think kids that do have ADHD, there's not a lot of good research on this, just to be clear, but my experience is that kids with ADHD are at increased risk of being bullied and of misusing technology, whether they're disorganized or whether they're impulsive. So some of the challenges that kids with ADHD have is an inability to turn off games and the internet. We all have that, to be fair. A difficulty in changing gears. They're at higher risk for oversharing and sexting because they're impulsive, more impulsive. So helping kids with ADHD understand who you share with and what you share. What can be text, what can be on email, what can be on social media, what should not be out there at all is really important. They're also at greater risk of becoming overstimulated by violent media and games. That's where you have to know your own kids. If you find that your kids are getting overstimulated by games, especially in the evening, then you do need to shift them away from those games. There is a higher risk, therefore, of problematic use and sort of internet addiction. This slide is more sort of about the disorganized kids. I think that technology can be an incredible tool for organization, but kids and adults need to be taught how to use it that way. And there's obviously increased risk of distraction. So some of my recommendations for managing technology if you have kids with ADHD are to establish clear time limits. Let them use it. Just have clear time limits for games, internet use. Use a big timer. Don't embed it in your phone or computer. And really, like you do for all other things, give them a lot of warnings about when you're transitioning. Provide encouragement for them when they do unplug. And recognize that shifting attention and tasks is truly a learned skill. Along with that, we need to talk about, and this is for kids with ADHD and not, how to manage homework with all of these distractions. I do actually encourage kids to do homework in public places so that you're less likely to be distracted, to try to minimize temptation, to think about technology when you do your homework. So some people like to do their online homework first and leave the offline homework for last, and some people switch it. But it should be part of the process. And I love these blocking apps called like self-control and self-reliance. The kids set them on their computers, and they can put in what sites they want to limit and for how long. So maybe they want to do their homework for 2 hours without getting on Instagram or Amazon. They set it and they're in control. And that also helps them to see how distracting the technology can be for them. Okay, so I want to talk about very quickly as I close about the 5 W's in developing a plan. When, where, what, who, and what if. To be totally honest with you, I really for the most part only care about who. Your job as a parent is to talk about the who. Who do you want to be online? Are you smart online? Are you kind online? Are you empathetic? Are you socially conscious? Are you friendly? Are you flirty? Are you your ideal self? Oops. Are you your ideal self? Your kids are growing up online and they need you to help them figure out how to be their best self and their ideal self online. So as you put together a plan, if you can go to my website, jodigoldmd.com, and I have some templates or in my book, Screen Smart Parenting, to help guide you. But the basic premise is that you're collaborating with your kids to put together a family technology plan. I want to read to you the way I introduce all the plans, which is, our family recognizes that technology is an important part of our lives. We believe that it should be used as a tool for organizing, learning, creating, communicating, and fun. The goal of your plan, whether it's written out or just discussed, is to use the technology for good, not for bad. All technology is not created equal, and your kids, whatever age they are, have to partner with you, as you put together this plan. And it's really about using it well and wisely, not about restricting it. Having said that, the plan definitely should have periods of time that are tech-free and periods of limits. So just to conclude, I want to go over my Cyber Bill of Rights. I've tried to take some general trends and synthesize them into one slide. So technology is a privilege, not a right. That's something that your kids need to understand. If they do, they will take care of their devices and understand the role it plays in their life. I like this one. It is a tool, not an endpoint. Your child should get a phone when it's a tool that they can use for communicating or for researching. Your digital footprint begins at birth. This is important for parents to understand when you post all the pictures. But I also want parents to understand that not mine, not yours necessarily, but kids' digital footprint is very large, and they are going to make mistakes, and we have to let them make mistakes. But it is out there. Privacy doesn't exist in cyberspace. There is no such thing as privacy. The delete key should be renamed the archive key. Nothing's deleted. The Snapchat images that just don't really disappear. Our kids need to be, and grown-ups need to be kind online. We need to be upstanders and not bystanders. Kids should not share passwords or personal information. As a parent, I think it's important that your kids get permission, even if it's free, to join or download new games or social media sites. You must follow your kids on all their social media sites. They need to let you know when they download it, and you can be seen and not heard, but you must follow them. Limit technology in the bedroom. Please do not sleep with your phone. And if you do it, try to stop. It's become like children get rid of their blankies and they move on to their phones. Phones should sleep in the kitchen or in a family charging center. They should not be the last thing you touch at night and the first thing you touch in the morning. Create tech-free times daily for your family. That includes parents. Something that's realistic. If you can do 2 hours, wonderful. If you can do 15 minutes, that's fine. It's about modeling for your kids that you are trying to find time, tech-free time for your family, or at least part of your family, to be together. And lastly, your digital identity should reflect your true identity. So thank you very much. I know it's been a whirlwind tour through the digital world, but I hope I've given you an overview of how I try to approach parenting in the digital age. Thank you.
So much interesting stuff, Dr. Gold. Thank you so much. I'm not even sure where to start. I have there are lots of questions, so let me just dig in. Someone just posted, wonderful. It really is. I mean, the way that you address the problems, but also pose the positive, the way that we can help our children present themselves well, behave kindly, empathetically online. It's really great. So it's a great way to see technology. And also, I think, as you point out, the role that we as parents play, because many of us are just as embedded in the digital world as our kids. Yes. In many ways. I'm just going to jump to a couple of the questions that that I've seen before here at Attitude, and I know are big issues for parents. One of the big ones is the whole question of digital devices in the bedroom. While I think everyone agrees that televisions shouldn't be there, and no one has a problem with that, with the transition that you mentioned of watching TV on your devices, and the fact that so many kids' schoolwork is so bound up with their laptop or their online device, parents have a tough time managing that, especially in high school. So what are your thoughts about this whole issue of keeping those devices under control at night or in the bedroom?
So one point that you bring up is how I don't know in terms of who's listening out there. I know if you've got parents of high schoolers, they tend to be the most frustrated.
Right.
And parents of middle schoolers parents of middle schoolers are still a little bit hopeful. So I will tell you that the earlier you start, the better. So if you have kids, I'm talking like 3 years old to 13 years old, please start this now because it's a big fight with the high schoolers.
Right.
However, so it's true. We can now watch, no kids watch TV on TVs anyway, so having them out of the bedroom doesn't really solve the problem.
Right.
So one thing I can say clearly that you can also say to your teenagers, and you can tell them that I said it, is no one should sleep with their device. So I believe in technology curfews, and I think that can at every age. So at whatever time your family decides, let's say at 10 o'clock or 10:30 or at 12 o'clock, the devices leave the bedroom. So maybe your daughter is watching Netflix in her room, and that's fine. It's now 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and it's time for the devices to leave. I recommend that you try not to pull them out, that you ask your kids to take their devices and put them in the kitchen or outside their door at a certain time. What that does is it protects whatever time. It protects 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. There's no need to have any devices, even just to charge. There's this idea that you need to have your phone so that because you use it as your alarm clock. So I went to the Wayne Reed around here, the pharmacy, and you can actually buy alarm clocks for like $4.99. So your kids should not use their phones. You probably shouldn't either, as an alarm clock. So so that's simple. That's the easy part. Don't sleep with the technology. And I don't know that kids will fight you so much on that. We do know that it disrupts sleep and kids are texting, in the middle of the night. During the day and homework is trickier. It's a personal preference and it really depends on your child, but more and more I recommend kids trying to do homework in more public spaces. There's just so many more distractions than we had. So whenever you can do that, I would highly recommend it. The truth is that kids do have to do their homework on their devices. I don't really agree with not allowing devices Monday through Friday, although it can work with young kids. It's not realistic for older kids. So I think the whole bedroom is a problem. Most of the problems with technology happen in the bedroom with the door closed. So as a parent, I would try to keep the door open. I would try to get them out of their room. I would take away the devices at a certain, let me rephrase that. I would ask them to remove the devices at a certain time in an effort to protect their sleep and their space.
Okay. I guess enforcing this was one person, Luann, put it, we end up feeling like prison guards. Our kids 12 and 16 can't be trusted to keep agreements. If we turn our back, one or both will do what they want and sometimes lie about it. We end up feeling like prison guards. And others say similarly that they try to put something like this in place and it just is very difficult to keep it ongoing, to stick to it. So
what I would recommend is really, I'm not saying it'll always work with teenagers, but I would try a different approach. I think that the kids always see the parents as, oh, they're coming to take away my stuff. Mm-hmm. I would pose it differently. We need a plan for our family. Could you write the plan for us? Okay. You'd be surprised. You get the 12 and 16 year, okay, we're not saying we're going to accept it, but we recognize that we don't maybe understand how important it is to you or how you're using it, how you're using it. So why don't you write the plan? And I also, one of the things that's really important to understand is that all technology is not equal. Like, to be honest, if my daughter was writing a blog about whatever, she becomes to be a writer and she's writing the Great American Novel on a blog,
Yeah,
go at it. She can spend as many hours as she wants. If my son is following NASA, and you can follow the space station online, it's a great thing to do with your kids. You can actually go online with them and see what's going on in the space stations. If my son or daughter wants to spend hours doing that, great. I'm not restricting it. So it really is a lot about, what I tell my kids is that I want to know how you're using it. If you're using it to study or using it for creativity or to create something, you want to make a movie, you can be on it forever. I mean, within reason, right?
Right.
But if you're using it just to play Temple Run or Candy Crush or some violent RPG, that's a different story. So I think you need to give the power back to the teenagers. Okay. So get them writing the plan, and then let them look at it, and then work on it together and see if they're not more, you can't get them to buy in more.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. This is addresses a question from Ariel, who says, do you have any suggestions for rules and how to enforce them for ADHD teens and smartphones, specifically device bedtimes, and how to enforce no use of phone texting during homework? And I guess what you just mentioned is in no small part the answer to that, which is enlist them in agreeing on a family plan.
Yeah, and use positive reinforcement. I'm sure many of you with kids with ADHD understand the positive. So positive reinforcement model of doing behavioral plans is you sort of do something that you want the child to do, and then they sort of immediately get a reward, afterwards. So one of the mistakes we do is we say, if you do your homework all week, you can be on your computer on Saturday. Yeah, that's really not so powerful, right, for most kids. But what I do tell people is if your kids come home from school and they do their homework and they practice their sports and they eat dinner and they take a bath and there's like a half an hour left and they want to be on their devices, fine. The same thing in the morning. It's really effective in the morning if you want to get your kids motivated. Tell them that if they've eaten breakfast, showered, whatever you want them to do, and they're sitting by the door and they have an extra 20 minutes, they can be on their phone. Why not?
Okay. So, a number of people have asked specifically, should computer use be used as rewards or punished, or taking it away as punishment, grappling with that very issue. So what you're saying is use it as for positive reinforcement.
I mean, everybody takes away the phone. The best way to use it for rewards is sort of the built-in reward. Like, I like the morning reward of because it's so time limited. Where you get all your stuff, and it's so hard for kids with ADHD, right, to brush their teeth, eat breakfast, do all their stuff. But if they know that the faster and better they do it, they get to spend 20 minutes on their phone. You don't have to take anything away. It's naturally built in. If they don't have enough time, they don't get to be on the phone, right? And if they do, they do. It's all up to them. You're not the bad guy.
So there's no discussion. There's no, yeah.
You're not having to take anything. It's really hard. I mean, when I wrote my book, I really wanted to name it Don't Take the Phone Away. My publishers hated it, so we didn't name it that. But it's this idea of they didn't like it. Because the problem is we all want to take the phone away because it's the only thing that seems to affect behavioral change. But we have to be thoughtful about when we take the phone away.
Right. Okay. Here's Michelle, who says we offer Nintendo time for completing required tasks and let him earn minutes for doing certain tasks. Is that the kind of a reward that you might see working?
Yeah, if you can maintain it.
Right.
If you're the parent, that's where you have to know who you are as a parent. I can tell you honestly, as a parent, that every time I set up these reward programs where I'm going to give them points for this or that, I'm the one who can't keep it going.
Right.
But if you're the parent, right? It's true. Most behavioral plans fall apart because the parents just can't continue to maintain it. If you're the parent out there that is really organized and really consistent and can keep that going, I'm fine with kids earning time.
Okay.
It's better than taking it away when they're bad.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And someone else mentioned that very concept of if you question, if we don't allow our children to do video games, are we making it even more appealing? And someone is struggling with that. I'm wondering, she says, quote, Jennifer, I'm wondering if I'm creating a monster by depriving him of this. Should I just get an Xbox with nonviolent games and monitor it? Maybe he would be less obsessed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I see in my office every day. The best comparison I can make for that are the parents that restrict all the food for the kids, and their kids aren't allowed to have sugar and sweets. I'm sure all of you out there have been to the birthday party of the 7-year-old, and there's one child who's got their face in the cake, shoving it in their face, obsessed with the food. And all of us parents are sitting there. We know what's going on at home. That child is not allowed to eat sweets at home. Now he's at the birthday party. Mom can't do anything, and he's shoving his face.
Yep.
You see the same thing in the digital world.
Okay.
Is the kids that are not when you're little. I'm not talking about 5, 6-year-olds. I'm talking about 12-year-olds. You see the kids that are restricted. They're dying for it. They're jonesing for it all the time. Whereas the kids that learn to use it well don't need it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all about balance, which is, of course, the hardest thing of all.
Sounds easy, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Let's see. So many interesting questions. Jodi, my kids are often on 2 devices at the same time. And similarly, someone else said, let me see if I can find this question. It's wonderful. Her daughter claims that by using multiple devices at once, she has a better chance of doing her homework. Oh, here, my daughter claims that having multiple devices going at one time actually helps her with homework. I have a hard time believing this, but a friend mentioned that maybe all the distraction is canceling itself out.
I hear that a lot.
Really?
I actually hear that a lot from teenagers. So what I can tell you, and whoever wrote this, you should Google this and print it out and show it to your kids. So neurologists and neuroscientists will tell you that multitasking does not exist. That
Right.
what the brain does, excuse me, what the brain does is it switches attention. So it's not possible for the brain to focus on two things. You switch from one thing to the next. So obviously, if you're switching from one thing to the next, you're not really paying full attention to either. So what she's doing actually is just completely being inefficient in her homework.
Okay.
I really, really encourage you to get your kids off their technology. They can still be on there, whatever they're using for school, but to be off the other technology when they're doing their homework. They'll be so much more efficient.
Right. What about music? Because we have had experts who recommend certain kinds of music as background noise for homework, specifically classical music usually. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that depends on the person. I mean, my experience is that lots of kids and adults with ADHD actually do better with background noise.
Right.
I'm like a coffee shop recommender. I should get like stock in coffee shops because I'm constantly telling my older teenagers and young adults with ADHD that they're not allowed to do their homework at home, that I want them sitting in Starbucks or Barnes & Noble doing their homework because they're actually less distracted. If I put them in their bedroom with the door closed, they're binging on Netflix, they're sleeping, they're getting nothing done. But having the background noise and the background kind of stimulation does seem to sort of calm them down and focus them. But again, nothing intrusive. So I think that depends on knowing you and your children's learning style.
Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense, though. I mean, I think in college, we all used to go to study in the library for that very reason, that there was an atmosphere around us that was helpful. Let's see. People are really anxious for sort of rules of thumb, which I know is very difficult. So, for example, what's the maximum number of hours per day that a middle school child should be on a device, or what's the age at which a child should be allowed to have a smartphone? Are there any rules of thumb that people can sort of hang their hats on?
Unfortunately, there's not. Everybody wants me to give them hours and ages, which I can't do, but I can give you a little bit of guidelines. What I can tell you is that the Academy of Pediatrics, up until 2015, actually used to recommend no more than 2 hours per day on screens. They actually, rightfully so, have retracted that. They now really talk about the fact that it's okay to be online, that there needs to be limits. They'll tell you, as I will, that the content matters. That's the problem with the hour, with the timing limit, is that it's really about how they're using it, not how long they're using it.
Right.
So what you want to go back to your kids with is, how are you using it? There is a place for entertainment media and relaxation media. That should be limited, though. So it really depends how they're using it. I do think, in terms of rules of thumb, you should not be really on the entertainment stuff until after you've done your homework or what you need to do. I highly discourage people from limiting it Monday through Friday. I think it just creates this desire to get to Saturday, and then the kids binge on Saturday.
Right.
In terms of the phone, you want to get a phone when they can use it as a tool and not a toy. Okay. What I see nowadays is that kids are getting it around the time they start middle school, which varies from place to place, around the time that they're dismissed from school on their own, that they might be traveling places on their own. Try not to give your kids a phone before they need one. Mm-hmm. There's some exceptions to that, though. I do think that kids of divorced parents should get phones earlier. I'll give a 6-year-old a phone if the parents are divorced. Okay. I think it's very powerful for a child to be able to talk to the non-custodial parent on their own phone, not have to talk to mom on dad's phone. So there's reasons. Right. But in general, not until they really need it because they're going places on their own.
Okay. Switching gears a minute back to video games, a couple questions from parents who are concerned about violent video games. Should they be worried about it? Is there an increase in violent behavior offline? Any comments about video games, quote, like Halo with shooting?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So the first thing I want to say to parents, which I didn't mention in the talk, is you need to know what games your kids are playing. So parents routinely come into my office, and these are all, good parents, very involved, and they will tell me in detail the kid's soccer schedule, ballet schedule, debate schedule, and then I'll be like, yeah, so what's their, online life like? What games are they on? What social media sites are they on? And they literally, these very educated, well-meaning, caring parents look at me and their jaws drop, and they're like, I don't know. He plays some game. I don't know the name of it.
Yeah.
I think he's on Instagram. I don't know. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what your kids are on. And I know that it doesn't feel like we can understand them. I can't understand them, but you have to take an interest in them.
Right.
So if your kid is on Halo or World of Warcraft, if your kid's not, don't worry about it. But if your child is on it, then you need to actually watch them play, get them to explain it to you, take an interest, and then assess if it's having a negative impact. In general, video games do not make kids more violent. There are lots of exceptions to that, and ADHD kids are often those exceptions, but in general they don't. And another thing that I usually talk about in this talk is there are so many positive aspects to video games. There's like 100 research studies that will tell you that it makes you smarter. People who play video games are better at reading instructions. They're better at metacognition, which means taking stimuli from different areas of the brain and organizing it. They have faster response times. So there's all kinds of pluses to video games. But try to understand what your kids are playing and then figure out if it's a bad thing for them.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, here's an example. We hear this frequently from parents whose children love Minecraft.
Yeah.
This person says, my son does all his chores, gets straight A's, he's very respectful. Every free minute is spent on Minecraft. Should I be trying to see how I can get him to spend less time? I mean, isn't there an issue, though, Dr. Gold, with diversity of activity? Kids who don't go outside, don't do athletics, don't do anything, but even if Minecraft develops good skills, is that really what you want your child to spend all their time on?
It's all about moderation. We never want, I love Minecraft. I think Minecraft's great. I'm happy if my kids are on Minecraft, but not if it's actually taking away from their ability to be playing sports and being outside. The online world should never, take away from the fact that your child is running around and being outside. What I like is that the kids are playing or doing their sports or whatever after school, and then they're playing Minecraft later. So if your child's obsessed, and so many kids are obsessed with Minecraft, and actually parents, they're really obsessed with going to YouTube and watching those videos on Minecraft.
Yes, yeah. Many people mention that. Yep.
Which is just, it's sort of crazy, right? So that I think that you can limit. And again, if you're out playing, if you go outside and play basketball or you go to soccer practice for half an hour or an hour and you come in and you want to play Minecraft, that's fine. But you do need to limit it when it's impairing, real life, of course.
Okay. I think this question of following exactly what our children are doing online is very difficult. And here's a person, MJ, who says, I'm all for following my children on social media, but my husband and I are not users of it. We don't even understand how we would follow them on Snapchat or Instagram. And if they scare us, we don't know how to monitor what they're doing. What should we do? I guess you're saying you have to learn it. Yeah.
What I'm saying too is everyone out there is smart enough to be able to figure out, and Snapchat's a tricky one, I will say, in terms of following. But you don't. Again, all you have to do is be on it. And to be clear, you don't both need to be on it. And if you've got an uncle that's really tech savvy and is following your son on Instagram, I'm fine with that too. But some grown up needs to follow them. And to be clear, you don't have to follow them on Instagram every day, or on Twitter or whatever every day. You need to spot check. I cannot tell you how many parents have said to me, if only once I had just checked what they were doing online, because these are kids, great, wonderful, straight-A kids who've gotten themselves on trouble. And what we know is kids that are in trouble, you can learn a lot about what's going on if you check their digital footprint every once in a while.
Right. But this means, requiring your child to allow you to follow them or to accept your friend request. Yeah. I think that's tough for some parents. Yeah.
But you don't have to say anything. It's the seen but not heard thing. Please don't comment. It's so, there's nothing worse for you to comment on their stuff, okay? And you're never going to be cool and you're never going to say it right. So don't comment. You're essentially getting permission to stalk them. You are just to check in on them, not to comment. So it isn't embarrassing. All the kids should know the parents are there, but not really see them.
Right. Julie says, we follow our kid on Instagram, but we've heard about kids having second private accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great one. While we still have a
Yeah.
minute, we should talk about that for a minute. So the other thing that
Okay.
I'd like you to know when you leave this talk is what a Finsta is. That's an Finsta.
Right.
I think it's a Finsta. So it's now very, very common for kids to have fake Instagram accounts. The purpose of, there's two things about the fake Instagram account. It's meant, the good part about it is that kids understand that they shouldn't share with their whole world, and they all have 1,000 followers on Instagram. So they set up these fake Instagrams so that they can share with their closer group of friends. That part I'm okay with. The problem with the fake Instagram is often also used to, evade their parents.
Right.
So you should just ask your kids, everybody out there that's got kids on Instagram, you need to go home tonight and be like, so do you have a Finsta? Or who in your class has a Finsta? I asked my son that, and he told me the 4 girls in the class that had a Finsta. He knew. So it's the other thing I don't like about Finstas is that kids think they're private. It's this whole concept around privacy. They're no more private than anything else on social media, and so it's helpful for kids to know that.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, running out of time. I think this conversation could go on for a lot longer. This is really fascinating and just so tough for us, as you say, digital immigrants. Thank you so much, Jodi Gold, and everyone. Please look out for her book, for Jodi's book, Screen Smart Parenting. I think you'll find, and on your website, drgoldmd.com. Already some comments from people who've found found your templates and found them very interesting. But I can't thank you enough, and good luck to all of us in managing this this brave new world. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you for having me.